Okay, so in this video, I'm going to show you some clips from an FDIC meeting that they never expected to be public. So they were saying things that they never expected you to hear, but I'm going to show it to you, and then I'm going to translate them into English for you, and what you should be doing right now. Okay, so let's get started.
Romance for lovers only.
This is the Hey Ed YouTube channel. I am your host, moderator, and all-around nice guy, Edward Anderson. I'm not a financial advisor. Don't construe anything that I mention in any of my videos as financial advice. Always do your own research before doing anything with your money. And today we're going to be talking about a secret meeting that some board members had at the FDIC, and they didn't want you to hear this stuff, but I'm going to show it to you. Now, this video has been out for a little while, and I actually looked at this video in doing my research for my last FDIC video. But still, not many people have seen this, and it's important that you see this because I want you to see the arrogance of these people. And I want you to understand there's an agenda going on, and they're not really there to look out for you. It's all about manipulation. Now, this first clip has particular interest for me as a content creator on YouTube, because at least 4 different Democratic congressmen and senators this weekend that I heard of came out and expressed the need for shutting down anybody spreading misinformation, okay? In other words, the truth. You know, they don't want people like me telling you exactly what's going on. And the best tool, frankly, that I have to fight against that, to make sure that I don't get canceled, are likes. So if you don't mind, could you give this video a like? It doesn't cost you anything. I'm not going to send you emails. And, you know, if you believe in freedom of speech and if you want to keep hearing the truth, please help me out by hitting that like button. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, because I'm always going to tell you the truth. And I want to grow this army as big as possible. So please hit that like button and please subscribe. All right, so let's take a look at this first clip where this gentleman talked about the need for controlling the narrative on social media and the importance of keeping people like me from speaking out. All right, let's take a look.
To some of Dick's early comments, I do think it is hard to get a lot of demand for transparency right now in this sort of period of peacetime. But that is going to flip, and it's going to flip probably even faster than we saw in 2008, where the need for communications really quickly in the social media world to avoid disinformation, to have some holding patterns for things like, I remember in the early days of bail-in, people saying they're coming for my deposits, right? So just holding communications that you can pull out that are helpful to deal with disinformation, some very simple things, and how quickly you'll be able to deal with different constituencies. For example, as liabilities are further up and closer to harm's way, when are you going to be able to give them some comfort, if any?
He's talking about how we can give people comfort in times of need. Hey, man, I'm sorry, but it's not your job to give comfort. It's your job to be transparent. It's your job to tell people the truth. This is why you cannot trust a word that the elitists say in public. Listen to what they say in private. Listen to what they say when they don't think anybody's going to hear them. I mean, he's literally talking about how to manipulate social media and how to push back against disinformation. Me. So please hit that like button. Okay, and now this gentleman talks to us about how you don't need to know this stuff.
Should be accessible when people need to know, but I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that.
So if you're not the right class of people, you don't need to know. And then the gentleman sitting right next to him agreed with him. Okay, so in this next clip, I'm going to show you that clip again, and then the gentleman sitting next to him is going to chime in, and he's going to elaborate on the consequences of you knowing the truth. And if you listen closely enough, you can hear the arrogance coming out of his mouth.
Should be accessible when people need to know, but I don't think you have much hope of reaching a public that doesn't have a professional need to know.
I completely agree with that. I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? Like, my insurance company doesn't tell me what they're doing with my assets. They just assume they're going to pay my claim, right? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do. More full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do. That we want them to have full faith and confidence in the banking system. They know the FDIC insurance is there. They know it works. They put their money in. They're going to get their money out. So there's a select crowd of people that are in the institutional side And if they want to understand this, they're going to find a way to understand this. There's a bunch of law firms represented in this room. There's a bunch of people that charge them by the hour a lot of money to explain this all to them. And it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And they all have huge staffs. But I would be careful about the unintended consequences of starting to blast too much of this out.
Okay, so they want to control you. They don't want you to know everything because they don't trust your response. They don't trust you.
Whether there are some market tests of whether you're being heard. And I think about TLAC. So TLAC should respond to good and bad news about the institutions. And it's really important. I mean, it's a little bit conflicted, right? I mean, it's important that people understand they can be bailed in, but you don't want a huge run on the institution. But they have, I mean, they're going to be, and it could be an early warning signal to the FDIC and the primary regulators when these things happen. And there may be some other prices, this is similar to what Jay was saying, in the market that you can tell whether people understand who's going to be protected, who isn't going to be protected. It would be, I think, an interesting study to look at the evolution of market.
Yeah, that'd be such an interesting study to see how we're going to react. We find out that some people are going to be protected and some people aren't. You want to study? Give me a call. I'll give you your study. Okay, and now the icing on the cake to demonstrate the cynicism of these people. This next woman is going to tell you that when there's the next big financial crisis and we have to make an important announcement, it's best if we do it on a Friday night. Okay, because you're looking forward to your weekend. You're distracted. You're thinking about other things. Not only that, but for those of you who do hear the bad news, there's nothing you can do about it for a weekend. You have to tough it out. You have to stress it out for the weekend. So just listen to the way they game this out at your expense.
So that if and when we do have to have that announcement on Friday night, ideally Friday night, that people are in a position to receive it, understand it, and say, yeah, that works.
So is the steam coming out of your ears yet? Okay, so let's talk about what happened today. Earlier today, Maria Bartiromo did an interview with a gentleman talking about how the banking system is becoming socialized.
I want to get your take on these emergency measures. How do you see things?
Well, first, let's back up a second. When you suppress the cost of capital for longer and longer and longer periods of time, you incentivize bad behavior. And what I saw inside of Lehman and what we've just learned over the weekend as to the way this bank was managing itself, it's blood curdling, irresponsibility, and the Fed enabled it. And then when they juiced rates up higher, they essentially just blowing up these bad actors.
Assess this response from regulators.
Well, they're socializing the losses. So they suppress the cost of capital, they incentivize bad actors, and now they're socializing the losses. Because at the end of the day, the Fed is backstopping this, and essentially QT, which they promised us would be $90 billion a month, essentially is over, because this is the Federal Reserve using its balance sheet to socialize the losses and provide liquidity to potentially lots of banks. There are a number of banks this morning that are down 50, 60%. So this has got a knock-on effect. They've basically used a Band-Aid, but it's clearly a risk to the taxpayer because at the end of the day, the taxpayer backs up the Federal Reserve.
They came up with a package to make all of the deposit holders at SVB Bank whole. Okay. Now, the cap is supposed to be $250,000 per account, right? But they're going to make everybody whole, even if you have $100 million. Who's going to pay that extra money? We are, the taxpayers. They're socializing the banking system. Now, other countries around the world are looking at us, and they're losing more and more faith in us because we don't honor our own rules. Now, I'm a free market capitalist. There should be consequences to decisions you make in a free market system. If there are not any consequences, that's when bad decisions are incentivized. But I'll tell you what's going on here, okay? They're hoping to cut this off at the pass. They're hoping to stop this bleeding early. It's not going to work. It never works. Now, my previous FDIC video that I did 3 days before this crisis, Go back and look at it. I'm not going to review the whole thing here, but I'm going to summarize that the FDIC is responsible for $9 trillion worth of deposits. $9 trillion. And how much do they actually have in available liquidity? About 125 billion. Let's be generous. Let's call it 200 billion. Okay, so they have $200 billion of actual assets, of actual money in the bank, pardon the pun, but they're responsible for 9 trillion. Now, roughly speaking, 125 billion would cover the first 3 or 4 big banks that go under. Everything else after that is gone. Okay, so as I record this, it is Monday, March 13th, 2023. The Dow closed down today 90 points, and the Dow closed at 31,819. Now, there's a reason why I wanted to put that in the video, because I want credit for marking this day. In the video that I did yesterday, I showed you the important support levels on the charts. And if things get really, really, really nasty, I mean, like god-awful bad, which there's a high degree of potential for that, then I want to be able to point back and say, listen, I told you that this is likely to happen. And actually, I've got a history of that. I've got a long list of videos you can go back and watch where I've been right. And I was right when other people were laughing at me. Now, I'm a man with pretty strong opinions, and I lean on them pretty hard when I'm right. And I'm pounding the table here. In my opinion, this is just the beginning. This kind of damage doesn't end in a day. It doesn't get solved quickly with these smoke and mirrors. They always come up with these band-aids early on that are so transparent. They never work. Okay, now I want to go into the tail end of this video here, showing you the prediction that I made just a couple months ago about this year. So let's take a look at that prediction. Prediction number 2. Okay, I do think at some point during the year, there is going to be a shock to the financial system. And listen, there are a whole lot of financial landmines out there, any one of which can cause a cascading effect. Anything from a large brand name bank, going out of business, you wake up one day and they're insolvent, and that's going to create more banks announcing that they're insolvent. I just want to make sure that you understand that your money sitting in your bank account is not safe. The FDIC is not funded nearly well enough in order to cover the money you have sitting in your bank. So what is my suggestion to everyone? As always, number 1, reduce your exposure to your bank. Start getting your money out of your bank now while you can. Number 2, take some of that money and put it into gold and silver. All of these derivatives, they're basically a bet on interest rates and on the economy. So if they're a little bit wrong, we're going to see large banks and financial institutions go out of business real fast. Survival tip number 1 is you need to reduce your exposure to the traditional financial system. In fact, the first thing you can do is exit the traditional financial system as much as possible right now. What I mean by that is get your money out of your banks right now. Okay, I'll stop it there, but you get the idea, right? I've been putting this message out for a while now. And my mantra on this channel, my 3-part recommendation is number 1, reduce your exposure to your bank. Number 2, get some of your money into gold and silver. And number 3, establish streams of passive recurring income. Please give my video a like. Please subscribe if you haven't. Let's grow this army. And if you've been trying to reduce your exposure to your bank lately and you've been having issues, could you please share your experience in the comments below and let the rest of us know? So live from Minnesota, Ed Anderson signing out.
Copy that.